Hey, I'm Coby. I'm here at DJ Tech Tools. Going to show you guys some finger drumming. Really excited to show you some of my tricks. Stay tuned. First off, whenever I have my routine, I typically keep my drums down at the bottom. I have my right hand always planted in the corner, so I have my kick, my snare, then my hi-hat. This is a ride or any sort of cymbal I put there, and then I have my samples living up here. So I'm a righty, I use my dominant hand. My index is always on the kick, middle finger on the snare, then my ring finger is doing those steady rides or a hi-hat sometimes, and then my left hand is filling in with some of those. And then I use my left hand also to play some of my samples on the top rows. So for this beat example, and then I'm filling in with my pinky. That's a little muted jazz snare. And then I have a little bass note that leads in that I also hit with my pinky there. I like to keep it a little bit loose with the structure, so some of these other pads aren't in the same organization, but they all have their own kind of internal logic. I like to put pads adjacent to one another if there's a bass supporting a note. So have my bass there, and then another bass right there, and then drums on the bottom as well. So I have a few samples that I set the release as very, very short, so I have to really hold it down to get the full sample to ride out. So it's a good filler and then a good transition if I need it. So on this beat, for example, so as long as I hold that one, it's going to play out, and then as soon as I let go, it will cut off, so I can use it as a little filler, as in something like that. Or if I want, I can just hold it down and then go to another beat just straight from there. So for this routine, you can see I have my kick, snare, hi-hat, tambourine, then I have a cowbell, floor tom, crash, and then a ride. And having those options, it gives you some flexibility. If you have a ride versus a hi-hat in the same square there, you can use your ring finger, your pinky to bounce between those. And then I have my samples living up here. And that's just the same vocal sample, and that's pitched across, so you can hear all the same sample. I just typically use the duplicate function on machine for any machine users, and then copy that across and then mess with each of those individually. Then to fill in, that sample's pretty short and I liked it, so I wanted to extend it. So I took it and put it on this pad below it, and then put some grain delay on it and then reversed it. So it has the same quality of it, and it allows you to kind of play and groove on the same sample. So for example, and then those are choking each other, so that's a good way to keep your beats a little cleaner, not have that overlap between. For those short samples, you can really go back and forth and they won't bleed. I have a bass supporting each of those same samples, so I have more vocals on this one, and then I shift to a different group, and now it's the same samples up here, but instead of those other portions, I have bass line supporting it. So when I typically start, I'm just sample hunting, looking for any good sounds that are interesting, a lot of times just from records, from other pieces of recorded music. And once I find something I like, I try to find a melody for it. So for this one, I really liked that kind of low piano ambient sound, and then built a melody around it, so pitched it around. And to me, it sounded really jazzy, so I knew I wanted to fill in with some acoustic jazz drums. So that's a light, dry acoustic snare. I have that muted one, and then I have some snare breaks chopped here. and those are a little flavor to put in just to give you some ghost notes and some grit. Once I found this, I was feeling it as kind of a breakbeat, really aggressive jazz feel. So then I started to mess around, find a groove with those paired up drum samples, and I found something like a... And then with the melody, it makes a little more sense. That kind of melody is flexible, so that has one rhythmic feel to it, and then I also like to bounce to that more standard just... I would say just by finding that main kind of groove, you can play around and do a lot depending how you hear it. I bounce between those two, so I haven't even settled on one feel. So for practicing finger drumming, I typically like to just focus on the drumming first and then have the samples fill in once I have a basic beat. So I find the groove first, and I use the bottom two rows for all my drums, so So you can see my ride is always landing with my ring finger, and I find it's easier to just kind of bring your whole hand down at the same time to keep that backbeat. So you can help your timing just by having that subdivision. And you can see I'm bringing over my index to that snare when And then if you want to get fancy with it, sometimes I'll use a little trill motion just like that to get rolls. And that can come in handy if you're busy working up here. And to practice that, you can just take it really slowly, just keep it really light and really keep the weight in your wrists and have them put the pressure on the pads for you. Stay away from just using two of your fingers. You can really do a lot more with your hands and your thumbs even too. You can see on this one I'm using my thumb on that cowbell. Really, the more fingers you can get on there, if you can see that my hands are at kind of a diagonal, I find it a little bit easier rather than sticking like this. It's kind of the difference between the keyboards you see that have that ergonomic angle versus those other ones. Your hands kind of sit more naturally like this, so I kind of approach this at an angle rather than straight ahead just with the two-fingered approach. I always like to warm up just by doing some like hand stretches. You can do one where you just kind of hold your hands out at mid-waist and then just touch your fingers and try your best to not actually touch, but snap them back. It's a piano or more acoustic instrumental exercise, which is where I picked it up, but it can help just keep your fingers loose. And then I'll just drum on tables too if I'm not at the controller just during the day, just doing kind of finger exercises like that. For beginners, I would say just feel free, if you have stock kits, any just drums with your software, just go for all drums and really just take it slow and work with a metronome to make sure you're keeping in time. To get the basic finger drumming feel down, I really like these three fingers just to keep it steady. So you can really start with a very basic, just start with your kick and your snare and make sure you're in time and you can feel some weight to it so you're really driving it. And then of course add the hi-hat or a ride or another element whenever you're ready. Get your pattern down and have it really solid so you can just do it in your sleep. Just practice something very simple, and from there you can fill in with those melody pieces on those downbeats and not have too much extra work to think about, because you know as soon as you're coming down with your right, you're also pressing with your left, and that could be a good way to just start with a simple beat. Hey everyone, my name is Coby. Thanks so much for watching. Shout out to DJ Tech Tools. I had a blast doing some finger drumming here today. Please click the link below and check out my full routine.